Chapter 26. Hostages. A number of states today are unlawfully detaining foreign nationals within their criminal justice systems for use as foreign policy leverage, often referred to as hostage diplomacy or state hostage taking. This form of coercive diplomacy is not new in international politics. TheSufenCenter.org, March 26, 2024. Because Park Sun-young, Min Seok, and Tae-sul were new to shifting, they didn't realize the idiosyncrasies defining varying shift points. Most on the map were in a particular color along a particular plane, but the world is multidimensional, and there were thousands of points that were high in the sky, low in the water, or even under the earth. They found this out the hard way. First, they came through right in front of Terminus, who looked at them with vague red eyes amidst his glittering skin. All three Koreans began a non-stop prayer as Rohan walked to the dragon. White Paw in the pack hung over his shoulders, napping. Rohan said incomprehensible words and rubbed the dragon's nose. He turned back and said something to the Koreans, realized the issue, took a drink from a horn, and motioned for them to do the same. When they had, it was like their brains popped a knuckle. Suddenly, things were clear again. Rohan was saying, "He's got an hour, maximum, until he wakes up out of his stupor. That's a month your time?" "I understand you!" Tae-sul was astonished. He'd not yet learned of the waters from Ricky. None of them had. There wasn't yet an opportunity for Ricky to relay that information. "Not for long. Follow me. The map says our first portal is down these stairs." They followed, but Park Sun-young chanced to look behind, where the light came from in this segment of God's woodshed. He stopped, stunned, and the other two did as well. A wall of gold so high in the sky it couldn't be taken in by the eye dominated all. In fact, there was no horizon, only the great building. There was no sky. The gold ran on so endlessly. The nearby gemstone wall, 200 feet high, seemed like a line of thread about its base. Rohan slapped all three. "We have no time! You shall see it when it is your turn to meet the Timeless One. Now come on!" "Yeah, sure. Yes, also." Their eyes stayed on the wall of endless, colorful, shining gold as they tripped down the gem stairs that extended again further than the eye could immediately discern into the distance away from the structure. In total, they spent about 40 seconds in the wild place, a little under 8 hours in the world of time. Several hundred feet beyond the dragon, they came to their next portal point. One of the cats taken from Errol's compound ripped it open with a bite of jerky, and they popped out in Canada, right on a stage in front of hundreds of drunken Canadians. Rohan was in the center with White Paw on his back, Park Sun-young to his left, Tae-sul and Min Seok to his right, holding cats. They did indeed appear to be some wild rock band. There was a man with a handheld wireless microphone in the center of the stage, several feet ahead, and he was looking back with wide eyes over a double-chinned, clean-shaven face. One of the cats puked and the portal slammed shut. What it showed was a golden backdrop with a dragon looking over its shoulder at them in tableau, perfectly, between the four, endless gold behind. Then that brief image disappeared with a thump, leaving just Rohan, Sun-young, Tae-sul, and Min Seok. The crowd cheered with insanity. To Rohan's right were a series of curtains, sandwiching bearded men who held instruments that to his eyes appeared like strange weapons. The man in front of them turned back to the crowd and said, in a tone that sounded confused but game, "Ladies and gentlemen, making an entry like I've never seen in my life, the Canadian Wombats!" The crowd were on fire. The lights went wild. In this time, the host held the wireless mic away from his face and said, "Where the hell did you come from? And how did you do that?" Meanwhile, the real Canadian Wombats in the wings were having a politely terse discussion of confusion with one another, wondering if they got bumped. Rohan spied one of the strange stringed instruments on the stage and grabbed it, incidentally striking a dissonant chord as it happened to be an active electric guitar. He thought it was a weapon. This echoed out through a filter pedal with preset sustain. Rohan incidentally strummed it several more times, confused at what was happening. He was holding it with the wide end toward the men in the wings, the neck under his arm. This looked like it was meant to be some goofy rock move. The crowd loved it. Tae-sul and Min-suk were suddenly in their element, in a way almost as Pavlovian as the cats to jerky. And they both thrust their respective felines on Pastor Pak Sun-young. Tae-sul grabbed the bass, Min-suk jumped on drums, and they went to town, soon becoming loud enough to rock the auditorium. Pak Sun-young fast conferred the cats to Rohan, who dropped the guitar. This prompted the instrument to make an unholy noise that somehow sounded melodic. Meanwhile, the cats growled and screeched under the spotlight, writhing to escape, as Rohan leaned back to keep their claws away from him, incidentally baring his teeth in an expression of the moment when White Paw in the pack behind decided to dig his claws in too. Sun Young snatched the mic from the bewildered host, screeching in Korean, "Stop it! This is no time for a solo! This is no time for a solo! This is no time for a solo! This is no time for a solo!" To the Canadians, his words sounded like some underground niche Asian death metal, so they cheered all the more. A mosh pit immediately formed. Rohan's accidental chords kept ringing out through the guitar pedal sustain filter. Tae-sul and Min-suk were more than capable of backing that grungy growl of a noise up harmonically and rhythmically. It was an open E for Tae-sul, and rock drums have no key. Pak Sun-young had to repeat what he said a dozen times, getting increasingly louder and more intense each time, until the band actually heard him, snapped out of it, blushed, and rushed to follow his wide motions out the wing past the Canadian wombats, who made a show of polite applause. They dashed in and out of varying backstage corridors until they came out in an alley, surprising several smokers on the venue crew. They didn't stop to apologize for the interruption, moving fast away. Pak Sun-young said, "Boys, we have more time in this place, but not enough to make another mistake like that." Tae-sul said, "Sorry, Pastor, it was a nice bass. How could I not?" Min-suk said, "The drums stole my reason, and the hairy one started it when he jammed that axe." Rohan didn't say anything. It was all gobbledygook to him without the water. They made their way some distance through Montreal and had to retrace their steps several times. They handed off the cats between one another, each animal becoming in turns restless. If they held one of the cats too near White Paw in Rohan's backpack, the animals would hiss and berate one another in feline ease, so they tried to avoid doing that. At one point, Pak Sun-young said, "Well, why can't we go through this point to this one instead of walking another mile?" And he held up a map before he compelled one of the cats. What opened was an ovular rift of raging water, a deep blue, clear, cool, man-sized geyser of water, shooting horizontally out of the portal. Rohan had a split second to guess what would come and managed to tackle the Koreans and cats out of the way. Both cats ran off. They had to be rounded up. One mercifully wretched, and the hole in whatever ocean they nearly shifted into slammed shut. Everybody was wet and sassy. White Paw bellowed, soaked to a rat-like thing in Rohan's pack. "I think that's why, Pastor," Min-suk said at length. They found their next shift points without further adventure. Soon, 3 dripping Koreans, 2 cats, a man that looked more barbaric than any Viking, and White Paw in a cat pack on his back, thumped into the shift room of calm, the violet twilight world shimmering behind. Everybody blinked between themselves, not sure what to do. One of the cats fell asleep, and the portal closed. "Hey, he didn't puke," said somebody in the room. "That's another one." "Every cat's different, I guess," said someone else. Pastor Pak Sun-young shook his head and waddled up to someone who looked like they were in charge, then barked out quickly in his variable English, "Russian house caught! Ricky's stuck! We gotta find a fat cat for big shift!" "These Koreans were just here a few days ago," somebody else in the room noted. "Guest chambers. Ricky brought them." "Oh yeah! That's right, I remember." "I don't remember the Viking, though." "He with us!" Pastor Pak Sun-young insisted. "Well, let's help him dry off and figure it out, then." And the men of Calm headquarters led the 4 to secure Cletus. When the smoke cleared, Green Kolya removed his mask, crouched down in front of Ricky and Errol, then launched... Let's do that again. When the smoke cleared, Green Kolya removed his mask, crouched down in front of Ricky and Errol, then laughed as their coughs slowly diminished. He ruffled their hair, slapped them about the face, and after a moment said, "All right, boys, down to your underwear." "What?" "Huh?" Boom! There was a dime-sized bullet hole in the ceiling and a smoking firearm. Errol and Ricky stripped to their boxers. The men went through their clothes. Green Kolya slowly stood, watching them closely. After a moment, one of Green Kolya's men came over with Ricky's clothes. He had a 9mm and this in his pocket. The man handed Green Kolya a flash drive. Ricky's eyes widened a moment, then he slammed them shut. Green Kolya looked at the drive quizzically, handed it off to the stringy blue-haired Pyotr, then turned back.
"Looks like you don't have anything about either of you that I want. Except for this little piece, Brownie. I'll keep that."
And he showed Ricky the 9mm.
"Get your clothes back on."
They did so, and then Green Kolya motioned for them to be cuffed, and he had them pushed down to the ground. He crouched to meet their eye.
"Now, who else was here?"
"There were some cats," Errol replied with half a smile and a cough.
"Cool cats, I expect."
Kolya grabbed his face at the chin and pushed his head back.
"Clearly, at least 5 people have been here for quite some time. All of them men. There is a shirt with Korean lettering on its tags that my strike force find in one of your guest rooms."
He held out his hand, and one of Taesol's t-shirts with some sort of Korean iconography was put there by a smirking mercenary. Kolya continued,
"I have reason to believe Koreans, specifically the northern variety, may seek to abridge my designs, and I intend to allow no such thing."
Ricky hadn't understood but the barest portion of this. He did develop his Russian over the years, but his vocabulary wasn't up to the task of parsing Kolya's rhetoric. However, he saw when the man held out the shirt and indicated the tag. There was a circle on one of the characters. Clearly it was something Korean, and clearly neither Ricky nor Errol were Korean. So Ricky made a feint in English, choking out, "Are you running about the woods in the dead of night just to be inspecting my dirty laundry?" A number of eyes, Green Kolya is the hardest of them, shifted over to Ricky.
"This is your shirt."
He held it out, sized it against Ricky's frame, and there was now a wrinkle in his forehead as a match was possible.
"You're about the most curly, slurping, funky Korean I have ever seen."
"I used to work in Seoul. I'm not Korean," Ricky shot back.
"And I suppose you need 4 guest rooms."
"He's a damn drunk." Errol spat. Ricky caught his eye, then looked back at Green Kolya fast. "How did you find this place?"
"That's for me to know, my little Bollywood friend."
"Oh, he's just familiar with Dragon Tail people. They do rituals in the woods out here. They must have told him long ago," Errol said to Ricky, then resumed his native tongue, addressing Kolya. "I know who you dabble with, Green Kolya, and I know what you're after."
"Do tell."
"You're after your own appetite and an untimely expiration." Green Kolya stared at him, then stood and laughed, which signaled his strike force to reciprocate. He continued in Russian.
"You know, I'm businessman, not savage, Errol. Someone has something you want, but that something is mine. I have good reason to believe it will come here. I have good reason to suspect it would be better were I to retain you for purposes of leverage until that time. So of course I will. Provided there aren't any substantial inconveniences on that front, when I have finished my business, I will leave you to your own devices, and you'll go on living peacefully, secretly, in whatever way you prefer. But I will know where you are and what you do, and will watch for anything else that is mine which may come through your fingers. And should such a circumstance develop, I will certainly exercise my right to retrieve this potential thing of mine. And of course, should you resist this state of affairs, once I've allowed you to live, I will realize I have made a mistake and execute a correction immediately. He switched back to English. Did you understand that, patchouli fingers? Have him clear up anything you miss. Green Kolya addressed the head of his mercenary muscle. Lock them in the southwest room on the second level and move the trucks around. Keep them running. Leave 2 men at the guns. Will do. And the two were hustled from the floor and marched up the stairs. Their hands were bound individually, and a third set of cuffs looped around each individual pair, manacling them together behind their backs. They were then seated in the center of Errol's study, where Rohan recently disappeared with the pastor and part of a worship band from Seoul. 2 fellows with square jaws, dead eyes, and big guns stood on either side of the door, one inside, one out. When he realized this room was Errol's study, where was the second portal, Ricky said, "Well, I suppose. So unexpected as we expected." Errol cut him off, and in a tone that indicated his words were meant to be taken a secondary way. Ricky blinked. Right. There was only so much Green Kolya's people could really know. He mustn't give it away. He had so many things going on at once, he was slipping. He shook his head, played along. "It has to do with the storm coming in. It's really raging out there. The second wave is always worse than the first," Errol replied. "And the third is being more wild than that. It does come in threes. Can we stand?" The men at the door didn't stop them. One did grin a little, adjusting his grip on his weapon, but they were about 10 feet away from either mercenary in the room's center. "We're going to stand," said Ricky, and they did so, if awkwardly. Now they had a better look out the window. It was a cyclone of snow by this point. As they watched, they saw lights come on, illuminating a number of armored four-wheel drive units blurry through the snow. It looked like they all had some sort of mounted rifle. One by one, Green Kolya's mercenaries moved the vehicles behind the cottage. Ricky could see 2 of the hardened soldiers talking, and it seemed there was some discussion about whether to rake the tire tracks away, as one man had an implement and was brushing it across them to demonstrate. Another man pointed to the sky and crossed his arm. Ricky felt he understood the exchange, as the one with the implement cast it away forcefully and walked back to the house. In another hour, it would not be apparent anyone had recently driven into the compound. So there was no reason to try and cover tracks. The snow would hide them anyway. Ricky did notice the low hum of the vehicles, and that it did not abate. They weren't letting the engines get cold. This was a sign he didn't like to think about. This storm might get well below zero. The guards let them move about the room in their awkward crab fashion, but maintaining a close eye, and would occasionally check in with the rest of Green Kolya's men via headset. One eventually left his fellow to keep them under control, and now they only had one mercenary chaperone to worry about. Errol and Ricky found an almost comfortable way to array themselves on a small couch in the study. There were several mirrors right across from either. Errol remembered there was a camera behind one. He didn't know which. At any rate, they could see one another and the guard through the mirrors, and so make very slight communications on the sly, despite being bound back to back. Neither man expressly let on to any hidden stratagem, and they wanted to keep the fellow by the door from being suspicious, so they tried to talk about anything that didn't have to do with their situation. That little skinny creature with the stringy blue hair in the AR headset, he would be going through all the network. If he were remotely competent,
He could watch them easily on the camera in addition to the guard. They needed to mind their P's and Q's. After several moments, Ricky noticed a lamp on Errol's desk blinking in a pattern and had to restrain himself from immediately saying something. This time it blinked in such a way it appeared to merely flicker, and there was an uneven interval between each flicker. Each flickering event, one letter. It wasn't the rapid-fire Morse code Ethan had shown them before. He was paying attention to their captors. Ricky caught Errol's eye through the mirror, and Errol subtly acknowledged. Now they both looked at the blinking lamp out of the corner of their eyes. The first message was this: SNAPFINGERSIFYOUSEE. Snap fingers if you see. Ethan must be tuned into the room's camera feed somehow. Ricky started snapping, then so did Errol, and they chuckled, and when the guard looked at them, pretended to try to sing a song. Errol started, Ricky failed to follow. The guard walked over and slapped Ricky. "If you can't sing, don't sing," he said. Sorry. Ricky bowed forward, looking at the floor. The guard went back to the door. The lights began their flickering routine again after several minutes. WEAPONIZEDLIDAR, weaponized LiDAR. "Not yet, Errol, not yet. We're not going to die yet. There's too much we need to get to, and so soon," Ricky said. "Yes, indeed. No, indeed. No, we won't die yet. Too many duties, Errol nodded. "Nobody dies if everybody cooperates," said the man at the door. Darn it. I'm just going to read that whole bit again. I apologize. "Not yet, Errol, not yet. We're not going to die yet. There's just too much we need to get to, and so soon," Ricky said. "Yes, indeed. No, indeed. No, we won't die yet. Too many duties, Errol nodded. "Nobody dies if everybody cooperates," said the man at the door. Confused enough, it was evident he was trying to appear as though he weren't confused. There was a pause, then the lamp blinked this: 2QAI. 2QAI. "I tell you, Errol, it is my opinion that there are being demons in these computers, you know." "You think this?" "I find it interesting," Errol nodded. "Well, if there are being such things and they are being at cross purposes, what do we do being caught in the middle? You don't want demon things with fractal star maps to warp points. No. If they have those, you've got to think it out. So what do you think, Errol?" "Why, I guess we must stand by. Is that it?" Yes. Very good, Errol. Very good." The guard walked over. "What the hell are you talking about?" UNDERSTOOD, blinked the lights. Understood. Looking through the mirrored camera, listening to the audio from it, Ethan got the impression they were waiting on something. He couldn't tell what, but thought it might have something to do with a coordinate map of shift points. There was no way he could suss it out. Stand by it was. It was well enough to be in a holding pattern. The storm meant he would have to figure out exact coordinates abstractly to use the LiDAR. There were several cameras with views outside Errol's facility, but that wasn't going to work well enough in the long run. Also, Ethan knew he must get away from the server array before he was noticed. Shifting in and out to find a good tech pit would take a little while. He was still unseen. On the late shift, facility staff seldom made the trek through that frigid, blinking, humming hardware labyrinth, but almost as Ethan had the thought, he saw a light click on at the furthest end of the facility. Time to move. He quickly established a back door through which he could remotely access the array, its computing power, and the work he did over the last hour. Then he roused the cat. He'd have to, as before, get in and out of the other world quick. He wouldn't use any tech there. He couldn't. It would be soaked to uselessness by some strange physical process affecting electronics in that realm. He sent one last message to Ricky and Errol through the automated Morse software he put together. then double-checked the shift point coordinates before turning off his phone and headset. He hurled the cat in its bag at the shift point and followed through fast. The last message he sent out was this: INANDOUT 2HRSMAX. In and out. 2 hours, max. Errol squinted and looked at the ground. You know, Ricky, there are some things in this life I'll just never understand. Well, there's a sort of liminal aspect of life we all must be being part of, an era of liminality. You're being between one place and another. Sometimes time will be getting away from you. What is 2 hours in the grand scheme of things? Yes, I think that clears it up. And Errol chuckled. The Russian mercenary backhanded Ricky. Are you stoned or something, off-brand Gandhi? What are you talking about? Time keeps on slipping into the future, Ricky yelled, making eye contact with the guard and holding it. Actually, intimidation was less difficult than refraining from a laugh because the man definitely did not understand any of what was going on. There was a tiny little electronic voice, and the man put his hand to his ear, saying in Russian, "No, they're acting drunk for some reason." Outside, the wind picked up. There was a kitchen on the main level done up in Tsarist style, albeit condensed to fit the smaller size of Errol's property. Occupying that kitchen like a conqueror was Green Kolya, who found some form of meat in the fridge and had a bite. Pyotr ever trailed him as a shadow, hands dancing in the air, going here, there, and everywhere about the database. At length he said, "Iskimtel loves everything she's finding. I've never seen her run so smooth, and remote no less." Green Kolya swallowed, looked up when he heard footsteps in the room above where their hostages were, then backed down at Pyotr, saying, "When you have a second, Pyotr, send out a berserk to all in the Brotherhood of the Dragon's Tail with the location of this little forest compound. They should know the place already. Old Errol made them move. I expect there remains quantifiable animus." Pyotr stopped what he was doing and brought up his AR headset to look Green Kolya in the eyes. His own were all pupil in his present state of mind. "You sure about that? Going loosely by my estimate, we'll get 100 or more up here, blizzard notwithstanding. That's 10% of 1,000,000,000 rubles under Berserk protocols." Green Kolya nodded. "I get the distinct impression we're going to need them, and soon. Are you still seeing traces of that Korean conglomeration of madness? What is it? Miru?" "Only the one I chanced on during the trip out." "That's enough for me," Green Kolya said. "Keep an eye on the perimeter. Those hermit commies are no trivial antagonist. Also, have you looked at that flash drive the Indian one had on him?" "I'll get to it," Pyotr acknowledged, AR headset back over his eyes and hands sewing through cyberspace with invisible thread. Choi was historically livid. He screamed himself hoarse, and flecks of spit froze in air around him every time he spoke. It took him 5 minutes to get around the man in the truck, and it took all the power Choi could muster not to execute him on the spot. They did wrench him from his truck and eventually move it themselves, leaving him with bruises to remember. They were 2 units down, with 1 severely damaged and 1 stolen. But that unit was stationary, according to the tracking beacon, for the last 5 minutes. That meant Russian Robin Hood and his retinue moved on. Choi was tired of the suspense. He radioed to the unit at the very back of the line. "Report on rear gun units!" After a second, the reply came back. "7, sir! Ready all units!" He hung up the radio and turned to the man in sunglasses and winter tactical gear beside him. "Contact all reserve assets abroad. Send all assets to Maya. We'll relay detailed instructions when we know more," Choi said. "And when you're done, put me on the line with Mairu." The man beside him paused for the barest of instants, all that showed of the coldness that percolated out from his stomach when Choi said, "Mieru." There was a touchscreen tablet in front of him which sent out the coded data packet to do as Choi asked. A moment later, he queued up Miru, sending the signal to an earpiece in Choi's ear from the tablet. Choi tapped his ear, and in an instant came that uncanny voice. Why do I not have my yoiju, Choi? Choi felt a ringing in his ears that grew until it became claws pinching the back of his head. He tried to shake it off, but his vision darkened, and he was forced to focus on the road, letting off on the gas a moment, seeing lights of Maya in the distance. He responded Miru. Do you have data on the VKD and their goons, the Brotherhood of the Dragon's Tail? BKD has their own QAI, Miru. And these traitors of the snow, they are strong or are they slow? The ringing in his ears increased. They've dogged us all the way. We set them against the children of Moksha. Your scenario gave me the idea. It should have spread them thin, but it hasn't. As the dragon gypsies are affiliated with that other QAI. So we lost Russian Robin Hood in Maya. I need you to find SUV-1 and backtrace any footage in Maya related to it. They commandeered this vehicle. The visions I gave to you are these and true, said Miru, and the man to his right with the tablet started to receive footage. Thank you, Miru. Find my Yaiju, Choi. And a brief, high, painful ring announced the QAI's exit. Choi ripped out the headset and swore at it, but it could be worse. At least they were too far for that damn audio hallucination trick Miru pulled. Got them! Where? Choi half swerved, looking over. There was a choppy feed behind a grocer, which had its position on a map minimized to the side. Apparently their quarry traded the stolen North Korean SUV for a truck. By the time Choi and his caravan recovered the black Suburban, dually tracks from this truck were already half covered in snow, though not yet lost. Those employees working late at the grocer kept their distance, sensing something beyond the pale, and only vaguely peeking through the windows in the dark as North Korea's finest went about recombobulating themselves. You better not slow down for anything if you want to escape me, Choi growled, kicking the tire tracks disappearing under the snow. He made his way to the vehicle at the end of their little parade. There were a stack of railguns, all glowing green, all about 100 pounds and the size of a small mailbox. Choi hefted one, grunting and pretending not to show it, bringing it to his own vehicle, along with 2 Bureau 13 men. Skylight, he breathed, finally, roughly tossing the railgun to the stronger of the two. Be ready when I tell you. And they followed him into the lead SUV. The grim Bureau 13 parade of 4 vehicles, the one their prey once stole yet ran, followed fading tire tracks out of Maya and into the howling frozen night.